So here I am playing Stonewall still, and I thought I had screwed up royally with the Union moving Tyler's forces forward with the artillery up front. In particular, I see these cav and think, wow, I can do a cav charge. Well, no I can't. For a cav charge in this game, you have to start within 4 hexes of the unit you're going to charge. You have to start your movement in that. I didn't go over the rules completely when I prepared the game, but and I'm not completely familiar with them either. But I kind of conflated it with some other games that I've been playing recently, and obviously the Great Battles of History, where the cav just have to have you in range and they can do a lot of damage. Well, that's not the case here. I can still melee attack, but the problem is the artillery can withdraw before melee. They couldn't withdraw from a cav charge. So, they're not in that much danger. And if I moved and charged forward with my cav, it might get in a lot of trouble from the infantry that could then deploy against it. That's something I don't want to do as the Confederates. I just wanted to point that out, what the situation is there. So now, there's going to be a battle evolving here, and the Confederates may well place themselves where they historically did, rather than attempt to assault Pritchard's Hill with 2 brigades in place there. Alternatively, they may swing back around and attack here. I've got to make my decision there. And indeed, Jackson's counter-marched, positioning himself to take the 2nd Brigade on. This is, to me, something you wouldn't do except for these army morale rolls. And it's a gamey type tactic. But the truth is, these guys are moving. I want to get away from them and to these things. I've made the Union pay their 20 points for activating their reserve. Now that it's starting to show up, I don't want to actually face it. I want to move down and face this, what I consider a lighter force, actually. Now, the truth of the matter is, though, these guys were pretty low morale. They would have been kind of worth fighting. Probably should have considered the historical shift into the Sandy Ridge area. The problem with that is, for the Confederates, there's just no value to being there. That becomes a question of, do you want to move? I don't see why the Union would attack them, is basically the situation. I would position myself along Pritchard's Hill to defend all the valuable locations. If the Confederates want to take, the leave the map option, they can, but I'm going to be generating Union victory points off the morale points throughout the game. So I've just allowed no battle to happen and see no problem with that. So that's why I'm moving the Confederates this way, because I don't see the historical situation actually developing from the game. I don't see the Union placing Tyler's brigade in a position where it's fighting alone. Alright, on to the Union, and it's going to be a tough choice of what to do. I'm going to be getting 10 points, obviously. But what do I activate? Do I give up my strong position on Pritchard's Hill in order to fall on the Confederate flank here? I can shift a little bit and face here. We've got some firing here. Oh, I didn't see that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I've got 5 strength points coming here at 3 hexes from the Union to this guy. Rifle, 3 hexes, that's times 1. Now, usually the 3 to 5 table is pretty good. In this situation, in this game, it's not so hot. I get a 2, that's no effect. And now, what depletes ammo? Yeah, 6 is a potential ammo depletion. Now, the Confederates are shooting back also with 5 strength points. They don't get the enfilade bonus, I believe. I have to look that up. I think they actually do get it. As long as some of them are firing through an enfilade position, they get it. Okay, so, but if some of them are firing through terrain, the terrain takes effect. So they're going to get a shift in their favor to the 6 to 8 table there. And I actually cause a hit to the Union, which means I grab a big old 4-point strength here, and we're seeing the actual first combat here. I have to mark the second. And on TSS, this is an option, but it's absolutely required in this game. Sullivan's brigade has taken a hit. That's a point of Union morale. So actually, we're still down here. The Union morale has gone down to 29. This isn't a big deal because they get that 10-point bonus at the beginning of the turn. I also have to make a morale check on these guys. They're a C morale, and I look over here. And a 2 means they pass. They don't have a problem. But now I have to deploy my Union forces to face them. And I only have 39 points, not 40. So I can only move 1 brigade without taking a penalty. I don't want that penalty. I'll move the Union. So now I've formed a quick little line here stretching from the woods down to the river line. The Confederates would have to slip by my cannon to cause any chance of outflanking here. So that's pretty unlikely. The Confederates get to fire back first. Now, because of the crappy fire table on here, well, I'm still going to fire my 3, and he'll shoot at 3 hexes at the C unit that I've already hit. Because the 3 to 5 table, this is one of the things you got to learn in the game, and unfortunately I didn't have it here, but the 3 to 5 table, you got to learn where the tables break and what they're good at. So 3 to 5, hey, great, I can't beat that. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm at range 4 here. I've got another 3 guns there, which could have actually been thrown in. Now 3 guns at range 4, they're only going to be worth 1 point, but I can combine these 2 to fire at him. So yeah, so I'm going to fire the 3 here, and I miss, and I'm going to fire the other 3 at this other unit, and that's also a miss. Now the Union gets to shoot back though, and here's where things get kind of ugly. I have a lot of firepower here for the Union lined up against the Confederates. I've got 20 points. Now, I want to cause losses. The 9 to 11 table is not bad, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to put 10 on each of these. The question is, what about my cannon? Do I want to bring that into play yet? At range 4, it's a T. It's only worth 1 each. It's only worth 4 points to fire that, and that's halved because it's against infantry. So I think the answer is no. I don't want to expend ammo to fire that off. So I'm going to fire those 2 10-point shots, and I'll take this one here. That's a 4. That's going to be a casualty on this R2. And that is from the 2nd Brigade. Burke's Confederate. And he's got to make a morale check. He's a B, which is pretty good. He passes. And now I've got another 10 on this guy. And I get another hit. And he needs a 2 under him. It's another point off Burke's. He's degenerating kind of rapidly. He's also a B morale. And he's got a problem. B morale, that's a star. Roll again, and if a 6 results, the unit routes, okay? And he's okay. And that's where we are right now. End of the turn. And the Confederates are seeing, you know, even though I've pinned one brigade down, it's not a pushover situation, right? Okay, so I moved the Confederates, building up a line, moving the 1st Brigade across to help defend against any attempt to attack by Kimball, which is probably going to happen. And I think this is going to just devolve into a straight-out slugfest. One thing to note, I moved the Hampton artillery battery into place, unlimbered it, but it can't fire. One of the nice little features in this game, artillery either move or fire. And I think that's carried over into the Brigade series as well for the gamers. So I unlimber my guns, but they have to sustain around. And they took one. I did the Union attacks. They picked another unit off this, another casualty off the 2nd Brigade there, which is really kind of wearing down. And they also shot the gun, and small arms fire against the artillery ends up hitting the crew itself. So now there's half a crew there, which means the firepower is halved. I also fired the gun here, mainly because I'm in such close contact now. I'm probably either going to lose that gun or win the battle before I can run out of ammo. So the odds aren't great. I was at range 3, which normally with a rifled cannon is ×2, but it's halved because of the firing on infantry. So I end up rolling on, the 4 table, which is not a good table. All I can do is pin. But I want to get some shots off because I want to reduce the firepower that the Confederates are picking back at me, especially if they're going to shoot at my cannon and maybe kill, the crew there. I don't know if that's going to happen. But anyway, by killing the crew on this one, it's going to be halved from now on, which is a big move since it's unlimbered right in front of me. If I shoot them again, they're gone. One thing in this game, though, artillery doesn't rout. Once it's unlimbered and in place, it's not going anywhere. The crew doesn't run off or anything. In the later Great Battles of the American Civil War series, they allow for the crew to rout away from the gun, which is kind of an interesting option. I don't know if you can use the same morale, though, in that case. It doesn't quite make sense. Anyway, because the guns had a tendency to stick around, and the crew's stuck with the guns under heavy fire when, if they were limbered and shot at, they would take off. Of course, the player would probably move them away. I'm going to come back with the Confederate firepower, and then we'll see what happens from there. Okay, so first thing, I noticed these guys up on Pritchard's Hill and gave them a chance to fire. They didn't do anything, but there were 7 strength points coming down. There's 15 points of guys up here, but the range is high enough to put them in the half level. So they took a pot shot, and likewise the Confederates took a pot shot back. Coming along here, a lot of light shots by the Confederates, and I think they got 2 or 3 hits. I've got 3 hits total on Sullivan, so it could have only been 2. Got a couple of hits, but we had our first leader loss check here. He passed it. It's 2, 5, or 11, I think, on 2 dice. Cause possible casualties. We also had our first ammo depletion for the Confederates. Now, because the Confederates don't have their own supply wagon, and their supplies are kind of iffy to begin with, they take 2 brigade combat effectiveness losses. I don't know if that's readable. Looks like it is. That are temporary. That unit now is ammo depleted, though. It can't fire. This is a really painful situation to be in, obviously. In TSS, both sides have plenty of ammo resupply capacity. So that it becomes a localized issue sometimes, but it doesn't really become an issue throughout the battlefield. But here, the Confederates don't have a supply wagon. The only way they can get one is to go grab this one, and they can flip it over if they capture it. The Union only takes 1 brigade combat effectiveness loss for supply losses, even if they lose their wagon and can't recover. Personally, I think that should be based on who has the wagon, who gets the more losses, but it's no big deal. Anyway, that's going to affect Confederate effectiveness, and it's kind of a troublesome situation for the Confederates. Well, I've got the massive force trying to hit 1 brigade. This should work well, except that Kimball can come down. For the Union, well, we've got enough points. I think we can activate a brigade and strike. And I don't see a terrible reason against that. The question is which brigade? 1, 2, 3. This is as far as I could get Tyler. So activating Kimball brings him right into the fight right away. Yes, I'm giving up this good position, and maybe the Confederates will be able to fight their way through with the Union limited mobility, but I think that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to try to hammer the Confederates early on and just break them. So, the Confederate got first fire, and managed to pin a unit. That's the first time we've seen that. That's going to go away at the end of the turn. But what it did was prevented the Union from being able to fire their offensive fire with that unit, thus cutting, the Union firepower by almost a third in this direction. They did manage to get an enfilade attack in here that was effective. Also saw the big old nappy fire for the first time, and that was so it's a strength of 4 at range 2. That would normally be 6 times, but it's halved because the crew is reduced, so it's only 3 times. So it was a big 12 strength points of damage firing forward. Of course, that's halved. It ended up doing a casualty. If it was firing at artillery, it would have been very effective, perhaps. More potentially so. But artillery just shoot out guns, and that doesn't do a lot in this. Anyway, artillery are not as effective in this game as they are in, say, the Brigade series, and certainly not as much as they are in the Napoleonic game, the Napoleonic Brigade series. But still, especially on defense, they can be very, very powerful. Here, rolling them up to attack, just not very effective. And with the crews being able to be shot out, they're really, I think, too weak. I've felt that about this and the great battles of the American Civil War, that they're just not quite as potent as they should be. In Terrible Swift Sword, they're not as bad because they take artillery casualties, which is to say the crew is getting reduced to the point where the artillery can't fire, presumably, or something. Different representation, I think it works a little better. I prefer the Gamers situation, which takes that and abstracts it a little further. I haven't tried the regimental games from the Gamers. They may try to go into more detail like this does. Anyway, what else do we have? Well, one thing that I wanted to point out, some of the losses that have taken place. I think the Union only lost 1 unit this time. I don't remember. I'm marking them down here. Great. I'm used to that from the Brigade series. Back with TSS, you have a death chart on both sides that you mark down who's been lost. It's not really a big deal. It doesn't affect overall Army morale. It's not that important. You can recount it as you desire, just for victory points or whatever. But here, I've got this kind of painful Army morale track that there's no way to recalculate it. And so I marked it down 1 because I know the Union took 1 loss, but maybe they took 2. So now the Union has just gained a morale point, if that's the case, or not lost one that they should have. And that's kind of a difficult situation in this game. It's something that I think is very easy to screw up, and just wanted to point that out. Another point with this, which isn't too big a deal because of the small counter mix, is when we get to counting victory points, it's going to be kind of painful because we don't have that death track or something like it. We do have the marks here, which could be useful, or we can look at the counters themselves. But either way, we don't have sort of this clear view of how well the game's going as we're moving forward. I don't know how important that is. And then the counting at the very end is a little more difficult. All right, well, looks like we're on to another turn, and I've been on this one for long enough, so I'm going to send this up.